In my recent Onimai video, I posed the question mark as to if Onimai would get a second season. And it brought up the age-old question, is it really that popular? And honestly, yes, if you look at any sort of data sheet in the West, MAL, AnyChart, membership listings, stuff like that, trends, it really doesn't seem like Onimai is doing that well. But as I've kind of found countless times throughout the years following anime, what's popular in the West isn't generally what's popular in Japan. I mean, the greatest example of all time was obviously Cowboy Bebop. That show did incredibly well in the West, while it didn't do as well in Japan. It did good in Japan. I don't think that there's a lot of people that spread misinformation that Cowboy Bebop just did terrible in Japan. It didn't do terrible, it did better in the West. And we've seen a lot of cases where the Vinland Saga writer often talks to the Westerners because it does really well in the West. Again, not that it does bad in Japan, it just does better outside Japan. But I think the funny thing that always comes from this misinterpretation of the data is that whatever is not popular on MAL, whatever's not popular on AnyChart, whatever's not popular on a ranking system site in the West, in English, suddenly means it's failing. And that's often not the case. And for me personally, it's sort of reassuring. I mean, come on. I'm the best example of somebody that loves a lot of stuff that's never at the top of the lists. Specifically MAL and AnyChart. They're pretty close to each other if you look at the ranking systems. And you have at the top of it Vinland Saga, Misfit of Demon King Academy's second season, even though that's been massively delayed. It's still at the top. It's got the most members. Tokyo Revengers, even though it seems like everybody's hating that show, for some reason everybody's watching it. Tomo-chan is a Girl, Nagatoro second season, Nier Automata, Bungo Stray Dogs fourth season, Bofuri second season. Those are the shows that are ranking at the top. And yes, for me personally, it saddens me. Yes, I love Vinland Saga. Yes, I love Bungo Stray Dogs. Yes, I love so many of these titles. But when you ask me what my favorites of the season are, it's the ones that are down at like the 15th. They're down at the 24th slot in those lists. Onimai is literally, I think right now, currently, my number one favorite anime of the season. It's the 24th favorite on the lists. Magical Revolution, which is fighting for first place, is way down at 15. Villainous Lisa Lott's 31st. Saving 80,000 gold for my retirement, 34th. I apparently have really crappy taste in anime because according to these charts, my shows suck. But the thing that always reassures me is when I discover by looking at ranking systems in Japan, I'm more in line with what they like. And that's a good thing, because what I like is more likely to get another season. It's more likely to be popular and thus grab the attention of Japan because, yes, despite the fact that overseas streaming services are paying a lot into the anime industry, it all comes down to what's making it in Japan, because that's what they're looking at most of the time. Mostly they're looking at sales of source material and stuff like that. The things that they want to sell outside of the anime is typically what's going to drive them to make more seasons. And so when I see my favorite shows doing really well over there, it makes me happy. And yes, it's probably the fact that I've been watching anime for so long, my taste has been so kind of formed around the Japanese culture and what is sort of the Japanese fan wants. Because yes, if you look at a lot of ranking services like Nico Video, if you look at Anycore, which is essentially their MAL, that's where you see what's number one. And this is where I answer that question as to, wait, is Onimai going to get a second season? It could. It really possibly could. Because if you look at all these ranking services, a lot of them have, number one, Onimai. That's the one that they're showing a lot of people are watching. That's the one that's got the high ratings. That's the one that has the large market share. It's Onimai. That's the big one. Now, yes, there's a lot of other ones like, Shin-chan and all that other stuff that keeps running forever and ever. Those are super popular, of course. The long-running TV shows that everybody's watching in Japan. But if you're looking at the core seasonal anime, that's what we're talking about here. Onimai. That's the one that's taking the top spot. And it makes me feel so good about my taste. And then, yes, according to Nico Video, Villainous Lisa Lott, second place. Again, another show that is way down at 31st on MAL and AnyChart is number 2 in Japan. I think the only one that's consistent across the board is something like Nier Automata, where it's number 4 on Nico Video, and MAL and AnyChart's got it about in the 6th point. That's the one that's the most consistent across the board. It seems like a global audience for Nier Automata seems pretty strong, and that makes sense because it's been a long-running franchise in the video game sphere, and now having an anime adaptation. Yes, my Magical Revolution, which is way down at 15 in MAL and AnyChart, number 5. on Nico Video. Now, sadly, saving 80,000 gold didn't do well in Japan either. It's way down in 20, whereas 34 in AnyChart and Mal, so I'm not doing any better there, but it gives you a sense that some things are consistent across the board, but for the most part, it's almost like there's a flip-flop. What is popular outside Japan is often not in Japan. What is popular in Japan isn't often outside of Japan. Now, I do want to put a caveat here. It really depends on what service you're looking at. Anycore has a couple that are up higher, like Vinland Saga, where you don't see that in a lot of the TV rankings and Nico Video, or a lot of these other services like Demora and stuff like that. So it's often going to rely on what the audience is, where they're at, what their location is, what data they're aggregating. That kind of stuff is going to obviously offset this data. This isn't 100%. But again, it solidifies that aspect of what you think is popular isn't always popular in Japan. Like for Nico Video itself, Vinland Saga is not even on the list until like 70. And a lot of people will echo that idea that it's not as popular in Japan as it is in the West. I think the biggest shock that I have with Anycore, which again is like a Mal in Japan, was Mo Ippon and The Fire Hunter. Because I think those are two of the shows that has like the least audience in the West. And honestly, in my own opinion, has been struggling for myself. They're just either not very well animated or they're just not telling a good enough story for me. But Mo Ippon is at number 4 and Fire Hunter is at 8. That would be I think the Fire Hunter is like the biggest shock out of all of it. But I think this is a cool exercise. I think a lot of people should like spend some time looking at a lot of these ranking systems. Again, I think it's a great way to kind of refresh your mind on what exactly works and doesn't work in the anime industry. Because I think there's a lot of cases where people think that something is extremely popular and it doesn't get a sequel. Or it doesn't get enough attention that they think it should get for merchandising and stuff. And a lot of that cases is because it's not technically popular in Japan. But again, I do want to emphasize the idea that even though a show is not popular in Japan does not mean it's not successful. Again, you can have cases like Chainsaw Man. There was a big controversy over the last few months about Chainsaw Man not selling enough Blu-rays, when in fact, Crunchyroll spent probably upwards of $800,000+ per episode. MAPPA made bank. No matter how you cut it, MAPPA made massive bank before they even hit the Blu-ray. As I've stated before, Blu-rays make up maybe not even 2% of what a company can make off of an animated series. It's not much. The overseas distribution, that's over 50%. So alone, what Crunchyroll paid for that, and you know Crunchyroll paid a fortune for that title, because they were spamming all over the place. They wanted people to watch it. They wanted to pull in the subscribers. They made bank. And now, granted, there's a lot of other aspects about that whole Chainsaw Man thing, including the fact that what was ever sold on the actual MAPPA store that had exclusivities for Blu-rays, they never knew what those sales numbers were. So based on the traffic to the site, they had a lot of traffic. But that is a long tangent to really state that it's not always what's popular in Japan is going to get a sequel. It's just a good metric to let you know that whatever you see on Mal, whatever you see on AnyChart, whatever you see on a ranking, a trending site, doesn't always match sequels. And in the end, I'm just happy that my favorite show, Onimai, is number 1 in Japan. At least they have good taste. At least they have good taste. But at any rate, I want to keep an eye on this kind of stuff. I'm going to try to figure out a really good system to really check out these metrics, because I would love to have a sort of seasonal look at what exactly is doing really well in Japan. And I'm sure a lot of people would probably be really interested in that information. So, call out to all you. I'm not 100% really good at looking at this data. So if you do have experience looking at these Japanese rankings, have some good ways of being able to adjust the metrics, because I know with Anycore it was very difficult to kind of adjust it in a way that was kind of comprehensible. Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to have some information on what sites do you guys use, or what is the best way to manipulate those metrics to really get a good idea of them. There's even some cases where if a show's been offline for a couple weeks, like Eminence Shadow, a lot of these sites don't even have it listed anymore because it's kind of been off the air for a while. Some of them looking at weekly, some of them looking at monthly, some of them are looking at yearly. So if you guys have any insight on how to adjust that, I would love, again, to make a seasonal look at, you know, what's popular in the West versus what's popular in Japan. Because I think, like I said before, it's almost like in a lot of cases, a lot of these titles are flip-flopped. And it's really fascinating to see, again, what you think is popular isn't so popular. But anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, especially those that are fans of Onimai. I'm sure you really love this video. If you did like this video, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what's thought of this information. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I did news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I would greatly appreciate if you support us on Patreon. Our tips link, our super thanks, or become a member of the channel. I greatly appreciate it, but it supports the channel, and y'all take care.